to this edition of the Travel and Hospitality Podcast by JD Power. I'm Sarah Baggett with the Marketing Department, joined today, as always, with our experts Michael Taylor, Andrea Stokes, and Azari Jones. Welcome to the podcast, everyone.
Hello.
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 Well, I would like to kick us off. We are at the very end of summer. We're moving into Labor Day weekend and all of the fun fall activities that everyone's looking forward to, including cooler weather. So I'd like to start us off with some fall travel and hospitality predictions. Mike, I'm going to put you on the spot first. What are you predicting for the fall travel season?
Well, mine's going to be kind of a boring prediction in that it's going to continue to be the same thing what we saw over the summer, which is it's going to be crowded. On the aircraft, in the airports, at the rental car counter, it's still going to be crowded, and prices are going to continue to remain high, if not a little bit higher. On the bright side, I'm predicting that we will not see a software outage of any kind, which will strand people for days, because that has happened over the summer. So I think that's probably the best thing that's going to happen in the airport and airline spaces, which is that things will run fairly smoothly, as smoothly as they did last fall. However, it's going to cost you more, and it's going to have a few more people jamming into your elbow while you're on the plane.
So kind of a mixed bag. Expect those high prices, but maybe no software outages.
Yeah, the demand for travel just has not slackened at all. People are still willing to go. They're still willing to pay prices. So it's kind of violating the laws of economics at the moment. But as we've said many times on this podcast, if something is too good to last, it won't.
Absolutely. Well, thank you very much for that. Andrea, very curious, what is your prediction for the fall travel season?
Well, in terms of the hotel industry, I think when the fall kind of turns, it comes around where that leisure travel sort of tapers off, right, as kids go back to school. But business travel starts to pick up in the fall, and there are a lot of conventions and conferences that happen in the fall, and just general business meetings, and of course hotels benefit from that in the fall season. So I do, given that some of the major hotel chains just released their Q2 earnings reports, they are, I think, cautiously optimistic, but business travel did come up in some of those earnings calls as a positive sign, especially again for transient business travel, which is really where a lot of the softening was kind of coming out of the pandemic, and predictions that it would take several years for just that general business travel to come back. So I think that's a positive sign for sure. In terms of hotel room rates, yes, inflation overall seems to be easing for consumers, but as Mike was saying, I don't think travel prices are really going to be declining, especially hotel rates. I think, if anything, they'll just sort of even out. I think hotels eventually will want to try to stimulate some leisure demand with perhaps lower rates on the weekends, or some deals, some fall travel deals. I do expect that we'll see a lot of those coming up soon here, where destinations and individual hotel properties start to kind of put out their fall travel deals. So that's also, of course, good for the consumer.
Everyone's always excited to snag a deal, especially on a great vacation, right?
Absolutely.
Well, speaking of the future, EVs are always top of mind. It's something we're all very interested in. And Azari, I'd like to sort of pick your brain on the rental car study. I think you've got some new brands coming to that study and maybe some new information on electric vehicles you could share with us.
Yeah, that's a great question, great insight. So we are excited. We're very, very, very excited that we're adding new brands back into our study. We have Payless coming back this year, Ace, Sixt, and Fox. So we're excited that we have new fresh brands to add to the study. And then also we're excited to combine some EV, electrical vehicle research with our new rental car study. Some of the cool things that I've been learning or finding out about the study is that we also do home ownership for EVs, but also do kind of understanding about infrastructure. A cool fact that I found out is that in California, you can go about 8 miles before you run into a charging station, but somewhere like North Dakota, is more like 500 miles. So, kind of thinking about, hey, you may not want to get an EV in North Dakota, but we do know that those things are coming down the pipeline and that our partners are going to have questions about, hey, should we invest in EVs for our fleet? So we're prepared to answer those questions with the data that we're finding out.
It's really exciting. That's a great point about the infrastructure. So you're saying regionally there could be big differences.
Yeah, it sure can. Yeah, depending on the state, depending on where you are, it may just be a little bit harder. So, if you're ever traveling up to the mountains this fall, you may just want to think about not driving an EV in North Dakota because it could be a while before you get to a charging station.
Well, great to know. We are looking forward to that study releasing later in the fall. Speaking of study releases, Andrea, we have yet another hospitality study releasing in just a couple of weeks here, and that's the third party hotel management study. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yes, absolutely. So, as everyone knows, we do report the results of our hotel guest satisfaction study every year, which ranks hotel brands across all of the segments in the industry. And that was released in July. We also are able to roll up that data to third party operators. So these are third party management companies that manage hotels on behalf of their owners. A lot of these hotels are branded hotels, and of course, our third party management guest satisfaction benchmark just covers branded hotel stays. But we have 18 companies that we're profiling this year in the benchmark. And this is something that the third party management community kind of looks forward to every year. We launched this in 2020, actually. So we're excited that that we're in the fourth year of the benchmark, but they look forward to the results because it really does allow third-party operators to see how they are doing and how their guests are perceiving the hotel properties in terms of guest rooms, the facility, the staff service, food and beverage, right? So, yeah, so we're excited that this is going to be released in about 4 weeks. And we look forward to announcing the results.
Very exciting. We'll definitely be on the lookout for that. Well, Mike, I want to sort of wrap us up with you. We've also got the airport study coming out in just a few weeks, and I believe there's some new methodology for that study. Can you walk us through that a little bit?
Yes, it'd be the same methodology that Andrea's described in her hotel study. I don't know if we've ever talked about that methodology change for airports, but in summary, we've gone from the 10-point scale system that we use for, 25, 26, 27 years here at JD Power to a 6-point system, which is Porter Perfect. And that may ring a bell. I believe Andrea's talked about it a few times on this podcast. And we're basically doing this to get a little bit more discrimination in the data, discrimination being a good thing in this case, get a little bit more separation among the brands that we're looking at. And it works really well for many branded studies. Like Andrea has, probably 100 and some odd brands in her study. I've got about 66 airports in my study. And believe it or not, 10 out of 10 means something different than perfect for respondents. And so we're getting a lot better, more of a bell curve if you want to get into the statistics of it, which is exactly what we wanted. So scores you will see if you're really remembering these types of things. And I commend your memory if you can remember what the scores were last year from our press releases, but they're much, much lower. Doesn't mean that airports are doing worse. It just means that the methodology has changed. And it's a little bit harder to get a really good score when people are looking at the word perfect rather than 10 out of 10. So one of the other things we've added is how much do people trust the airport? A lot of it has to do, I have to admit, a lot of it has to do with the airlines at the airport because people do go to airports, not to go to airports, but to take a flight. And if your flight isn't leaving on time, you're a little bit annoyed. But there's a symbiotic relationship. But I was looking today at the trust scores as they first came in, and it's not a surprise to me that the smaller airports in the study, do better on trust than the larger airports that are in, very crowded urban centers. So that shouldn't surprise anybody. It didn't surprise me at all, but it was nice to see that reflected. So those are the changes. Our release date is September 18th. And we'll have, again, the same three categories we've always had or have had for the past few years, which is mega airports, medium-sized airports, and large airports. A mega airport being more than 33 million passengers, the O'Hares, the LAXs of the world, the Detroit Metros, those type of things. And the medium airports are like Indianapolis, a consistent winner with us, and smaller airports like that. So those are the major changes. And again, that's going to come out in a few weeks on September 18th.
Well, Mike, you bring up a good point that when people go to an airport, they're really there to catch a flight for the most part. So, speaking of some of these airlines, I heard in the news recently that Southwest has made a big change with their seating policy. How do you feel like that's going to affect the airline? And can you give us any insight into that?
Sure. I mean, if you've flown Southwest, you've kind of realized that they have a much different way of loading an aircraft than anyone else, which is basically when did you confirm your flight? Kind of puts you in an order, and they stack people against pylons, and they have A, B, and C groups, and 1 through 40. And basically, the people who are quicker to confirm their flight are the people who are in line, and they do have the option of you paying an extra amount of money to get first in line as well. And then once you get on the aircraft, there's no assigned seating. You just sit wherever you'd like, and then they fill the aircraft that way. And it's a surprise to some of their competitors, but the people at Southwest who like that system love that system. And it's kind of a strange thing that they have been very much of an oddball. But there's a temptation for airlines to change their processes and the way they handle passengers in order to make more money. And that's what's going to happen here at Southwest is they're going to go to assigned seating. You'll have, seat 12A, 12B, and 12C that you can pick beforehand. And then also we'll be introducing premium economy seating like you see in Delta, American, United, and those major carriers. And so there'll be a little bit larger seat. They're going through what it would take to reconfigure their fleet. So this is going to be a slow rollout of these amenities and these different processes. But it will happen eventually to the entire fleet. My guess it's going to take them about 3 years to reconfigure all of it, because you got to pull the aircraft in, pull all the seats out, put the new seats in, make sure that everything's working. And that's not an easy process, not a cheap process either. And then, of course, you will be charged accordingly, depending on where you want to sit and what kind of seat that you want to sit in. But, knowing Southwest in the way that we do, because they're a long-term client of ours, full disclosure, they are very cognizant of what their legacy is and what their marketing messages are. And I believe they will be giving a value message for people who want to pick their seats and also have that upgraded seat as well. That's very important to their brand image and the brand image that they want to present. And I believe they'll preserve that as they go forward. But again, they'll be more like the crowd is and less like the kind of outside the pale or beyond the pale type of operator they've been in the past. So again, this is going to bring them revenue. It's going to give people some options. It'll be more like the other competition in the category. And I think it will be confusing for just a little bit for Southwest, but like everything else, it'll settle down in the airline industry.
Well, it will certainly be interesting to see what the effect is long term and how long that rollout takes. Thank you so much for that insight. Well, to all of our experts, thank you for joining us today. We enjoyed this episode. We're looking forward to rejoining our listeners again in September. Until then, if you have any questions about any of our studies that we've mentioned on today's episode, please visit our website. Thank you so much.